go. Yes, I. Bless it. All right, we got a good day ahead of us. Good day ahead of us. Just gonna give a little information today. We're gonna be talking about Rastafari and the misconceptions. And not only the misconceptions, we're gonna talk about nationality. And where did this concept of nationality and a standing in international law, where was it evolving from? And how had it evolved in America? Because as we've been explaining, we did the little speech about Theodore the Second. Matter of fact, let me put Theodore up so we could get that right quick. Show him all the respect. All right. Yes, I. I hit the wrong one, sorry. Well, this is congressional records showing that Ethiopia is me. All right. Congratulations, the people of Ethiopia on Ethiopia's second millennium. Ethiopia on the second millennium of Ethiopia. All throughout, this is Rastafari Makonnen was crowned Emperor Haile Selassie. They give you all this history, so you got this in your congressional records. I want you to see this, your congressional records to understand this now. Because, we talk international law and understanding of our standings in the international law, but there are some things we miss, and I think because we don't know our story, our history, it kind of gets lost in it. So let me give one more little component. Let me go back here. So I just wanted to put that there. So, and I wanted to say this here, show this. Ethiopians celebrating Emperor Theodore II. Who was Emperor Theodore II? Let's give it a minute to roll up on us. Yes, I. The Ethiopians are celebrating Emperor Theodore II, right? So, let me see if I bring it up. I hate when they have all this advertisement everywhere. All right. So, here goes the thing. The historians have extensively studied Emperor Theodore II, Abba Taket Kasa, in his, what they say, horse name and his natural name, who ruled Ethiopia in 1855 to 1968. I mean, not 1855, 1968. That's wrong. 1855 to 1868. 1855 to 1868. They made a big typo there. He rose from the very humble beginnings to the Ethiopian imperial crown, defeating important regional feuds. Right? So, in various reforms, he abolished slavery. Note that the period predates even Abraham Lincoln's emancipation policy in the United States, arguing that we are all slaves of the Holy Trinity, which speaks to the Christian theology viewpoint. And it is important to note that Emperor Theodore was a well-read product of the church education. He also abolished polygamy by state decree. In the terms of the state machinery, he established standing modern national army and a salaried government officials. His economic reforms as it relates to land brought him a collision course with Ethiopian church as he sought to cut down church land holdings in the country and the number of priests and deacons serving in the church. Okay, so he ran into a little hip with that, but we have to stress the fact that Emperor Theodore, when he found out that Abraham Lincoln was going to emancipate the people from slavery, he sent to assist in this process, because a lot of times in our history we've been trained by Europeans that we have this that black Africans or whatever, we were backwood and we were in the woods and we didn't have no understanding. We was in the jungles and we didn't have, and the Europeans were the only ones sailing around and handling international affairs, and we just was on the sidelines as slaves. It's not it. Then we get to the point to where a lot of the brethren they go to the concept of the Moorish history, and then they say so and so, and then they get into this history. But let's look. Emperor Theodore. You got to remember now, when you're an emperor, you're dealing with an empire. So Emperor Theodore sent 4 billion of bullion gold to the United States for us. And when this 4 billion of bullion gold got here, Abraham Lincoln and a gentleman named Thaddeus Stevens. I'm going to pull up Thaddeus Stevens. And Thaddeus Stevens was Abraham's side man who was also against slavery. That's how they have him written in history. I don't question it. I don't know. He was definitely against slavery from being in some of his books and stuff some of the documents that he wrote. But what a lot of people don't know about Thaddeus Stevens is he was with Abraham Lincoln, and they were part of the era when Abraham Lincoln wanted to create what was called greenbacks. And so Thaddeus Stevens argued that slavery should not survive the war. He was frustrated with the slowness of the U.S. President Abraham Lincoln to support his position. He guided the government's financial legislation through the House as Ways and Means chairman. As the war progressed towards the Northern victory, Stevens came to believe not only should slavery be ours, but black Americans should be given a stake in the South's future through the confiscation of lands from the planters to be distributed to the freedmen. His plans went too far from the moderate Republicans and were not enacted. Okay, Abraham Lincoln was later assassinated, 1865. So now, in the midst of all of this story, most people don't get the underlining story here. And there's a history. I would try to pull it up, but I'm going to move a little fast. I'm just going to use right here and talk about it. At the time of when they're speaking right here with the war, after the war is over, they have a debt to the soldiers. They have a pension debt. They have their war debt. And they're trying to figure out how to do this. And being that Stevens is over the Ways and Means, he is in knowledge of Abraham Lincoln and them are receiving the 4 billion of bullion gold from Theodore. So Theodore sent 4 billion of bullion gold. When it came, there was an argument of how to give it to the slaves or to the released of their colonies. So when they decided that, okay, if we give this to them, this is going to make them powerful. So then Abraham Lincoln came up with a thing called greenbacks, and they were going to do greenbacks. So you hear the history in our history, they tell you that Abraham Lincoln was going to bankrupt the country. But the country was already bankrupt. The country was just gone through war and everything. So the hope of the country was this bullion gold coming. And when the gold arrived, the argument was, do we just give it to the slaves? Because if they give it to the slaves, what happens? We become the wealth and the most powerful ones in this region again. So they said, no, let's figure out a way. And it was this gentleman here, Thaddeus Stevens, who came up with 40 acres and a mule. Let me see if they put him in here for this. All right. And you got to do your history on the know-nothings too, because this is where some of the trickery falls into. I'm trying to see if they put it in here. He's the one that came up with 40 acres and a mule. All right. right, legal tender, national banking, 1863. Okay, here they go. And although the legal tender legislation allowed for payment and government obligations under paper money, meaning they created the paper money. The national debt should be paid with greenback. So they wanted to pay, but it has see, they got this thing as proposed what became known as the gold bill, right? As value of paper money dropped, Stevens railed against gold speculators after the consultation with the Treasury Secretary Salmon P. Chase. All right, I want you to know all of these players in this game. So they got the gold bill. All right, so they let me get to assassination, black codes, where they didn't put it there. I thought they would have gave him that props and stated it. But he was the one that came up with giving us the 40 acres and a mule rather than give us the gold. So now what happens is Abraham Lincoln clearly was not in too much favor of not giving us what we were supposed to. So they started saying Abraham Lincoln was going to bankrupt America. And the plot against Abraham Lincoln insisted until they assassinated Abraham Lincoln. Now, some people will say, okay, well, this is a lot of kind of speculations. We don't know no history of Abraham Lincoln dealing with Ethiopia. And Africa was under siege and they were taking slaves. So what's going on here? How is this possible? What are we talking about? A king from Africa had gold to send and he sent it to America? And instead of them giving us the gold, they created this story of give us 40 acres and a mule? But instead of us getting the 40 acres and a mule, in the end, they closed the Freedmen's Bureau. And when they shut down the Freedmen's Bureau, they took all of the gold and the wealth from the Freedmen's Bank, and everything closed down, and all of the processes that they were doing with us for the Freedmen's Bank ended. It just stopped. So I wanted to show you a date for something. Let me see if I could pull it up right quick on here. I probably passed it already. All right, so where is it at? Problem reconstructing, Benjamin, where is it at? Financing the war. I just seen the black codes. All right. So it just stopped. So you got 1865. We know Abraham Lincoln gets assassinated and everything. The violence against, they say, African Americans was common, and then they enacted the black codes. And the Freedmen's Bureau. Stevens called the bill a robbery because it did not. Okay, here we go. When Illinois Senator Lemon Trumbull introduced a legislation to reauthorize and expand the Freedmen's Bureau, Stevens called the bill a robbery because it did not include sufficient provisions for land reform or protect the property of the refuge given them by the military occupation of the South. Johnson vetoed the bill anyway, calling the Freedmen's Bureau unconstitutional and decrying its costs. Congress had never purchased land and established schools or provided financial help for our own people. Congress was unable to override Johnson's veto. All right, so what's going on here now? Because they didn't have gold to even pay their soldiers at a certain point of time. They were short of the funds of pension. They didn't even have the war funds. So what we're explaining to you is that the funds that came in to the United States came from Emperor Theodore. Emperor Theodore. Now, how do we know this story? I'll give you the story, how the history comes. And I think I can pull him up. This story actually comes from when Rabbi Ford, well, you know what? I already got something pulled up for it. This story actually comes from when Rabbi Ford went to Ethiopia and he visited Ethiopia and was brought into the church, and the monks explained to him and gave him records and explained some of the things that had went on in our history. Let me see if I can find Rabbi Ford. Okay, here we go. All right. Before the Ethiopian mission ended, an invitation to return and repatriate to Ethiopia was made to Rabbi Arnold Ford. That offer of repatriation was given to him was extremely significant because Rabbi Ford was the leader of the Hebrew Israelite black Jews. So this is a different time period than Abraham Lincoln, right? But this is when Rabbi Ford was called to Ethiopia. And this is how this information and this knowledge from the church and from Rabbi Ford came back to the Americas, explaining about the gold that was sent. All right. So this gold that was sent, some people say, well, man, this is 1865. Africa was under siege by America and all of Europe, and they were taking over our land. So how could Ethiopia be sending money to America? But what most of us don't understand is the history, right? Because America's history, let me see if I got this open here. No, I got it. America's history is important in that aspect because you've got to know that, how we look at America's history is not what it was, how we have been taught in school, because we've been taught to have a certain precept that makes us see ourselves as helpless, powerless. So if you know the history of this church, the Abyssinian Church, Baptist Church of New York City, it was founded in 1808. Wow, this is before Abraham Lincoln. This is before Abraham Lincoln. So Abyssinian Baptist Church, currently located in Harlem, New York, was founded in 1808 when a group of black parishioners left the First Baptist Church of New York due to the imposition of racially segregated seating. Reverend Thomas Paul, an African-American minister from Boston, Massachusetts, assisted the group consisting of African-Americans and Ethiopian immigrants. What? Ethiopian immigrants were coming to America in the 1800s? What? Ethiopia had ships and people were traveling? How were they doing this? Ethiopian immigrants? But why would they come here? Why would they travel? Well, Ethiopian Cushites have always traveled the world. We have always been everywhere. So I just wanted to get you an idea that there was a relationship prior to 1865. So when we go to this history, talking about Thaddeus Stevens, and we talking about Theodore, Emperor Theodore, 1855, 1868, sending the gold to the United States. Well, what happened to Emperor Theodore, and why did his history kind of go the wrong way? Well, you see here, he ended slavery and so forth, but they're not going into too much history right here. But I'm going to tell you, there were European visitors, after this gold message was sent out, and that Ethiopia sent this $4 billion worth of gold to America. America was still trying to figure out how to get their funds and their money right. They were still a broke country. They still had just bucked on Britain. They just bucked on France. You have to understand their positioning from they needed another country to help them and support them in trade, or they would not survive. They would be like Haiti. They would have went under. So their support came from an unusual place, Ethiopia. You have to remember the temperature in the planet then, because the Catholic Church was trying to rule everything, and they had set up their jurisdiction and the primacy of Peter and so forth, right? So I'm going to show you something about the primacy of Peter, because I'm trying to get you to see an atmosphere in what happened in our history that most of you are not keenly aware of. So it diminishes your ability to decipher the history, right? And I need you to be able to decipher these time periods, because without that, you can't properly see what's going on. And we need you to be able to see what's going on, because you've been programmed and trained not to see this intentionally. So, I can give you a construct of words that can place your thought process to where certain things you just don't catch, you won't see, because you've been programmed a certain way. So I want to show you something that's important here. This should be it right here. Eastern churches. I just do the thing. Should be something here. It's not coming up. Let me go a little further. All right. Maybe I thought it was right here. I wanted to show you that Ethiopia had rejected the primacy of Peter. They had rejected the Pope's claim. Right? Right here. It should have been right here. Maybe it wasn't. Because we don't understand what's going on the planet right there. So the primacy of Peter placed the Pope as the vicar of Christ. And as the vicar of Christ, he claimed this supreme authority over all of the planet. Right? Based on their interpretation of the scriptures, their interpretation of how they perceived the Holy Scriptures. And let me go back there. I just want to make sure I show everything in writing, because I don't want someone to say, well, you just said that. I'm sorry, y'all. I should be having these things open, but I just be wanting to let y'all ride with me like that. Alright, maybe it's in this next one. History of the Papal primacy. Didn't give you nothing on Ethiopia. Okay, this might give me something. Let me see who all. It might just go back to Chaldea. But I wanted you to definitely see this, because, some people would say, well, why would Ethiopia be having a relationship with the United States, with America? Why would they even do that? Well, Ethiopia was one of the places that had rejected the church's claim to primacy of Peter. And because of that, you have to understand that, because America was claiming to be Protestant. They were protesting. They were protesting this claim as well. Supposedly, that's what they were trying to build on. They were trying to build from the Protestant. The Protestant were protesting this claim of the Pope and of them under this authority. So this, oh man, I should have had it better. Let me try it right here. So here we go. It's got two of them. Where are they at? Enter. All right. Okay. And the Ethiopian rites, all of them equally Catholic and equally in community, bishop, ports, and guests. That's not giving me. Well, if you look at the Catholic Church today in the year 2000, we are not conformists by any means. Okay, this is a Catholic thing. They trying to say they're the same. Okay. All right. So they did get the Ethiopia did reject the primacy of Peter. I can find it later on and probably post it in a post. So when Ethiopia rejected the primacy of Peter, this is why Ethiopia was having a relationship with the United States. This is just international law. This is just international economics, and people of the world were building. But when most people see this history that Theodore did that, I always have to just take them back to this to let them see that Ethiopians were immigrants. They were traveling. So it's nothing to send gold to America. Man, it's Ethiopia. They couldn't send no gold to America. To America. So now some say, well, where's the proof that Abraham Lincoln even dealt with Ethiopia? Well, let's look at some of Abraham Lincoln's own writings. Let's find out what he said. All right. If you look right here, this is 31, so I can just come back, but I guess I have to show y'all so you know what we're looking at. Abraham Lincoln from his own words and contemporary accounts. See, they hid these records, but you always just got to keep digging because there's no way they can hide them all. All right? So when we come to this component of history, we start saying, okay, they tried to hide some records, but they didn't catch all of them. But we got to search the house records because you have to remember there were two people involved in this gold. Thaddeus Stevens, and they created the 40 acres and a mule. And then we did not get the 40 acres and a mule. And there was the other name that was there with Thaddeus Stevens. Who was the other name? Who was the other name with Thaddeus Stevens? Let me show you. So we get his name definitely registered in here because you need to know this one. Salmon P. Chase. Chase Bank. So Salmon P. Chase and them, these are the formers of your Federal Reserve and your Treasury process. But we were debt. We had war debt. Where did they get the gold to put and create all of this stuff? So I want you to kind of consider that history. Now let's go back here to Abraham Lincoln so we could get this little thing here. Because I want you to know how powerful Ethiopia has been in your whole history of what you call black history and our fight for liberations and for freedom. Ethiopia has been there. It had got to be, he said, midsummer 1862. Oh, moving too much. All right, here we go. What does he say? He said in substance, Mr. President, I approve the proclamation, but I question the expedience of its issue at this juncture. The depression of the public mind and consequences upon our repeated reverse is so great that I fear the effects of so important a step. It may be viewed as the last measure of exhausted government. A cry for help? The government stretching forth its hands to Ethiopia instead of Ethiopia stretching forth her hands to the government? His idea, said the president, was that it would be considered our last shriek on the retreat. So Ethiopia was giving support. They were stretching forth their hands to Ethiopia. So you got to really understand our history and positioning, because now if this is the history of America and this $4 billion worth of bullion gold became the Federal Reserve, became the Treasury, became the foundation of Chase Bank and all of these so-called financial institutions, They would never want you to tie back with Ethiopia because you would have right of claiming the debt they owe you. Hear what I said? They would never want you to tie yourself back into this history because of the debt they would owe you. So they had to erase this history of what Theodore sent and did and the connections to Abraham Lincoln. So in this, Abraham Lincoln is assassinated, and Theodore, Emperor Theodore, they had sent mercenaries and Europeans to Ethiopia, to Emperor Theodore, to try to find out where the treasury gold was at. And these so-called people who were sent there, they were warned by Emperor Theodore and the council not to go in certain areas. But they didn't heed it. So now when the Europeans tell the story, they give you the story of Theodore that you will misconstrue because they don't want you to tie back in to a truth of you. So Emperor Theodore II, not only did he reunify various Ethiopian kingdoms, but let's go here. Oh, this is a short run. They still don't like to give this history on him good. What happened? All right. All right. It's an expedition. How they word these things? Napier wasn't an expedition to rescue the prisoners. You sent a war. You sent mercenaries, aided by rebellious nobles along the way. Aided by rebellious nobles, so they hired other people out of Africa. In fact, some, I ain't gonna give their names, but we know. The British forces attacked Theodore's forces at Magdala, the Magadala. So on April 10th, 1868. What happens is these people that they're talking about were told not to go in certain areas, but these people were sent on an expedition to find where they kept the gold at. Now that they know Ethiopia has all of this gold that they could send $4 billion worth. So now these people who go there plotting, as the emperor said, plotting against him, they get caught and they're imprisoned for going in a restricted area, violating sacred things. So now they send a military force to get these people in hopes that these same people already figured out where the gold was at. But they didn't. And before they could torture the emperor, before they could capture and torture him for the same information where the gold was at, the emperor committed suicide. And this so-called expedition that was supposed to just come for these prisoners, they ransacked all of the churches, they stole so many scrolls. Our honorable chaplain, Ahmadi Zion told the story today. He said they stole so many scrolls that they had a line of paper and books all the way to the ocean, all the way to the beach where they boarded back to the to the sea. So they were able to see that these people had took so much stuff they couldn't even carry it. They were dropping it, but they stole all this. So this wasn't an expedition on a good one. These people came to find the gold that Ethiopia had. And Emperor Theodore locked them up. And they killed Emperor Theodore. You know, they say he committed suicide, but this was an attack. You killed him. And after Emperor Theodore, see, they done got their gold. So after Emperor Theodore, they don't need us no more. They don't need to do right. Let me show you how much influence Ethiopia had on Abraham Lincoln. You see this term? And this too shall pass. This is considered a King Solomon's term. This too shall pass. It was also notably employed in a speech by Abraham Lincoln before he became so you got to understand these influences and where they use these sight words to let you know what they're dealing with, who they're dealing with. So just building up this understanding that Ethiopia sent gold to the United States. This is in 1868. Right? This is 1867, 1865. This is the 1800s. Ethiopia is a government organized and able to apply assistance to other governments. International affairs. So let's go a little further in this history. And again, I want all my Christian brothers and sisters to understand this is not a religious thing. I want you to understand your history. Because you're tied to this. Because many of you created Baptist churches. The Abyssinian Baptist Church in 1800. So this is a Christian church supported by the Ethiopian immigrants. A group named the New Church Abyssinian, after the Abyssinian ancient name of Ethiopia. All right. So I'm going to take you a little further. So this is New York now. This 1800. This 1800. Ain't no Noble Drew Ali. Ain't no Marcus Garvey. Ain't none of this stuff here. The nation not here. None of this is going on. There is no nation. There's no Moors. There's none of this going on. All right. All right. But let's get a little deeper into this history. In 1970, there was a book published by a brother named Clayton Adams, Ethiopia, the Land of Promise. So this was the mindset back in the day. Ethiopia was the answer. And I could show you that Nathaniel Huggins, close that out. Let me go here. Put Nathaniel Huggins because I want everybody to know this brother here. All right. I want y'all to know Nathaniel Huggins. All right. Come on, Nate. I know we live, so we're using up some energy. All right, here we go. Willis Nathaniel Huggins, historian and activist. Most of you don't know that this brother, Nathaniel Huggins, was a very big component of everything that you call the wake up, the black consciousness, your Dr. Ben, your Henry Clark, all of this, where we at today, came out of this brother here in a major way. Let me see. I don't want to get the wrong one It's going to be a short read. I want to give you something good there. All right. Nathaniel Huggins was born in Selma, Alabama in 1886 and was first educated in the Selma Training School. Upon moving to Washington, D.C. with his family as a part of the Great Michigan, Huggins, an excellent student, attended Armstrong High School for the colored youth, and from there, Huggins attended Columbia University on a scholarship where he received his B.A. in 1914. Move on down a little further. A&M, New York Public Schools. He moved to New York and would move to New York City, where he would become the sixth black educator hired at the time of 1922. Hired by the New York City Public Schools as a New York City educator. Huggins fought to have African American study curriculum passed by the school district for use. He created such a curriculum with the backing of historian Arturo Skornberg and J.A. Rogers. Unfortunately, it was not approved. Huggins mentored and befriended both Skornberg and Rogers during the Harlem History Club, mentoring numerous individuals, including John Henry Clark. Wow. But you know what? Huggins was an Ethiopian advocate. He was the one pushing the Ethiopian call. All right, so this story here did not go all the way into the story. I wanted you to understand how his story ends and what happens after that. Let me see. Hopefully this will do it. Won't be too much. Nathaniel Huggins was doing great works in teaching and building. In fact, he had gained the interest of His Imperial Majesty. Remember, when His Imperial Majesty came to America, he came as Minister of Education, because His Imperial Majesty knew that the key to changing Africa and getting everything up was to go into education, because our people can't move forward without education. This is why we do all of these online things, because we know we have to become the new educative process for our people. So on Tuesday, July 15th, 1941, New York City detective supervisor the recovery of a male body from the Hudson River near 72nd Street after fortunate person was Dr. Willis Nathaniel Huggins. His sister, Roberta Goldsby, and his wife, Rosetta, identified the body at the city morgue on Wednesday morning. Huggins had been missing since December the 23rd and last seen by friends and relatives at the home located at 1890 7th Avenue. He was reported to have $500 in his wallet. This is the 1940s. He got $500 in his wallet, y'all. That was not unusual, since Huggins owned the Blyden bookstore and had been associated with several independent black publications. The only clues to his whereabouts was an overcoat that had been found on the George Washington Bridge, and a letter that Huggins sent to his wife stating that something is going to happen. At the time of his disappearance, Huggins was teaching history and economics at the Brunswick High School in Brooklyn. Not only was that part of it, was His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie was coming to meet with him. His Imperial Majesty was coming to meet with Huggins about education. Let me give it to you right here. Friends, for the Friends of Ethiopia in America. So you see John G. Jackson, you see Henry Clark. There is a whole history. See, you see Ross Dest of Ethiopia. These people came to meet with him. Everybody came in contact with him, came to meet with him. So he had to set up this activist position and was pushing education so strong that His Imperial Majesty wanted to bring him on to be Minister of Education. And he had done pushed J.A. Rogers, all of these brothers to cite, even Marcus Garvey's wife, Amy Garvey. Everybody was under him, and he had taught everyone to say Ethiopia. This is why UNIA had the national anthem where they said Ethiopia. This is why John Henry Clark, this is why Dr. Ben, all of these brothers in the past said Ethiopia. And somehow the propaganda, the COINTELPRO that no one really talks about, they killed this brother, threw him off the bridge. A lot of our teachers who list in this list, they kind of walked away from Ethiopia then. Because you get killed for speaking about Ethiopia. They'll make war on you. So the history goes. So let's get this history where what's all going on, why Ethiopia was so important in America around this time. Because we just looked at John Huggins in 1940. But we got Clayton Adams in 1917. So the same year, Robert Attila Rogers, another black man, also produced a pamphlet called The Negro Map of Life, and began traveling across the United States preaching the law of Ethiopians' redemption. This is what's going on in America. This was the movement. This is when we had the chance to undo the coils that bound us. 2 years later, in 1919, the Regent Plenipotentiary Rastafari sent 4 ambassadors. 1919, His Majesty sent 4 ambassadors by the way of the ocean, traveling ocean, the Royal Ethiopian Mission, including Dejamat Nadao, Emperor Zadito's nephew, and commander of the Imperial Army, Eto Balet Haile Selassie. Mayor of Addis Ababa, Atu Kantiba Gabaru. So when we look at this, we're saying, okay, 1919, His Majesty sending diplomatic representatives. Their purpose was to renew a treaty of friendship with the United States, renew because they already had it, since signed by Emperor Menelik in 1904. And, we already was here since the 1800s. So, they don't. And in honor of their visit, the Ethiopian flag was ceremoniously hosted over the White House. You gotta understand this now. All right, during the Ethiopian mission, the bloodiest race riot in Chicago's history erupted. How many of you know this? This is our story. The bloodiest race riot in Chicago's history. Chicago's still struggling right now. Gang violence. Jokers talking about they drill rappers. So during the Ethiopian mission, the bloodiest race riot in Chicago history erupted on July 27, 1919. Eugene Williams, a young black boy, drowned at 29th Street Beach after a rock was thrown by George Stuber, a young white boy, knocked Williams from a raft. The Ethiopian prince, Nadeo, who stated he had seen the Chicago Defender newspaper in Ethiopia, told one of their reporters Ethiopians dislike brutality, burning at the stake, and lynching of any nature, and other outrages handed upon the African American people. Fight on, don't stop. So the prince is saying that they don't agree with what's going on in America. Gotta understand this now. It's telling you to fight on. So riots sweep Chicago. Why we don't know this history? What happened? So let's read a little bit more. I'm going to go down fast in a minute. I just want to get this in. Before the Ethiopian mission ended, an invitation returned repatriate the Ethiopia was made to Rabbi Arnold Ford. That the offer of repatriation was given to him was extremely significant because Rabbi Ford was the leader of the Hebrew Israelites, black Jews of Harlem. In this capacity, he would be able to resettle the existing remnant of Israel that was captured in the slave trade. In addition, Rabbi Ford was the musical director for Marcus Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. So I hear a lot of brothers say Marcus Garvey rejected His Majesty. Please, people, you need to know what happened. We're going to get to that history. Because right now we have these same problems. We are at the brink to where we can change our situation automatically. But because we want to have personal feuds and make our own personal emotional feud bigger than the movement, we fail our people, leaving them at the hands of the enemy to be tortured, killed, and murdered at any point of time without any recourse or remedy. This could have been ended a long time ago. So given that the UNIA was the largest, greatest organization of scattered Ethiopians, Africans, it makes perfect sense to make an offer to the UNIA. Nobody in the UNIA, nobody don't talk that His Majesty made an offer to the UNIA. Finally, as a musical director, Rabbi Ford could use the traditional spiritual medium of song to communicate the Ethiopian message of the mass of black people scattered in North and South, Central America, and the Caribbean. Rabbi Ford did. And it is therefore no coincidence Rabbi Ford gave the UNIA the Universal Ethiopian Anthem, later to be used by the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. The Rastafari family worldwide still sing the anthem as it gathers. So what's going on? Because we ain't just talking no religion here. We talking about international law and rights, diplomatical positions, reparations, repatriations. This is what we're going to be talking about now. So on December the 20th, 2019, it's supposed to be December the 20th, 1919, the Chicago Defender wrote The Planning for Abyssinians on January 27th, 1920. The king of Abyssinia will be crowned, and then he will be appoint his representatives who will accompany the prince here to resume commercial trade with the United States. This is what St. Bishop J.A. Hickerson himself, a native of Abyssinia, told the Defender reporter who interviewed the bishop at the parish house of the church, and they termed the Ethiopian National Church. All right? So let's get to how this riot started. So during the same year as the Ethiopian mission, a black man from Chicago named James Morris Webb published a treaty entitled A Black Will Be the Coming Universal King, Proven by the Biblical History. So this is before Rasta's chanting now. Reverend Webb's prophecy was based on the 4th chapter of Micah and the 3rd chapter of Habakkuk and the 3rd chapter of Joel. Negro Universal King coming to rule the world. This is what they chanting. Rule the world now. Abyssinians, men accused of killing 2 during a flag-burning parade. Now this is where it starts. So we have Prophet Grover Redding and Reverend James Morris Webb. You could call these your 2 Rastas, first Rastas. Another black man named Grover Redding who lived in Chicago, Chi-Town. Shout out to Chi-Town representing holding it down. And witnessed the visit of the Ethiopian mission. And he began to preach the visit of the 4 Ethiopian ambassadors, was the actual literal fulfillment of Psalm 68. Princes shall come out of Egypt, and Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hands unto God. Redding also preached that the Ethiopian mission fulfilled Isaiah 18:1-7. Woe to the land shadowing with wings, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. Well, who's shadowing with wings? America, the eagle wings. That's beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. That sendeth ambassadors by sea, even in the vessels of bulrush upon the water, saying, Go ye swift messengers to the nations scattered and peeled, to a people terrible from their beginning. Hither a nation meted out, trodden down, whose land the rivers have spoiled. All ye inhabitants of the world, dwellers on earth, see ye when he lifted up an ensign on the mountain. And when he bloweth the trumpet, hear ye. For so the Lord saith unto me, I will take my rest, and I will consider in my dwelling place like a clear heat upon herbs, and like a cloud of dew in the heart of harvest. And in that time shall the present be brought unto the Lord of the host of people, scattered and peeled, from a people terrible from the beginning. And hitherto a nation meted out and trodden under their feet, whose land the rivers have spoiled, to the place of the name of the Lord of hosts, Mount Zion. Had not princes come out of Ethiopia? Did not 4 ambassadors arrive to the land shadowing with wings, the American eagle, which is beyond the rivers of Ethiopia? Were not the black people scattered and downtrodden and sold on auction blocks upon arrival and terrible notice their beginnings in the spoiled land? Wasn't an ensign, a flag raised above the nation's capital in honor of the swift messenger? And I'll say this, not to move too far, but it says, I will take my rest. You know? For the Lord says unto me, I will take my rest, and I will consider my dwelling place like a clear heat upon herbs. So after certain things happen, and he's going to take a rest and it's going to allow it to take its course. So let's see what's taking course now. Let's figure out if we in this course. Because at one time, all the foundations were out of course. But ye are God's children of the Most High. So had not princes come out of Ethiopia? Well, so Redding was going hard. Redding's the interpretation of the Ethiopian mission and the meaning of Isaiah. Redding preached, woe to her that is filthy and polluted, to the oppressing city. Therefore wait ye upon, saith the Lord, until the day that I rise up to pray. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdom, to pour upon them my indignation, and even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord, to serve him with one consent. From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my supplement, even the daughters of my dispersed shall bring offering. So let's go a little further in this. So Prophet Redding went to prophesize, and he was talking. And the fulfillment of this prophecy inspired the faith of Grover, the Prophet Redding, to start working. He began to organize Ethiopians, my supplement, even the daughters of my dispersed and afflicted and poor people in sorrow, to whom in the reproach it was a burden, to gather them from the solemn assembly, to place the name of the Lord of hosts, Mount Zion. The name of the Prophet Redding's organization, the Star Order of Ethiopia, and the Ethiopian mission to Abyssinia. The Prophet Redding started the Treaty of Friendship and Ethiopian ambassadors to renew with the United States, and according to the treaty, Article 1, the citizens of the two power, like the citizens of other countries, shall be able to freely to travel and to transact business throughout the extents of the territories of the two contracting parties, while respecting the usage and submitting themselves to the tribunal of the countries which they may be located. In order to facilitate commercial relationships, the two governments shall assure throughout the extent of their respective territories the security of those engaged in business thereof and of their property. The two contracting governments shall reciprocally grant to all citizens of the United States of America and to the citizens of Ethiopia all the advantages which they shall accord to the other powers in respect to custom duties and impost and jurisdiction. So now they understood international law. They're looking at the treaties. These brothers in 1970, so they see it. So then they start speaking about the treaty between the King of Ethiopia and the United States and commercial relations between the two countries. And they started putting out to the people a proclamation, a treaty of commerce, and all of this was set. So to the Prophet Redding, the treaty reviewed two important truths. Ethiopian citizens would be accorded rights and privileges that he, as a black man descended from Africans brought to America against their will and chains aboard slave ships, was barred by Jim Crow laws and customs. Ethiopia in the future planned greater contact with the United States for commercial purposes. I'm going to go a little further. Thus, on one hand, Prophet Redding sought to escape his second-class Jim Crow status and condition and saw salvation in Ethiopian citizenship. As an Ethiopian, he and others would be freely to travel and transact business throughout the extent of territories with the security of those engaged in business. Prophet Redding sought to renounce his American Jim Crow Negro status and become a citizen of Ethiopia, pledging allegiance to the government of Rastafari. So this is a political, this is a international law movement. I know, but we get real religious because we know it's written in certain things and people get confused, they get scared. Oh, he ain't my Jesus. My Jesus in heaven. My Savior coming. It's not about Jesus. It's about what we see is the strategy to remove us from the coils of oppression. And His Majesty came and handed out a way to us to do this. And as he started implementing these moves on the chessboard, international world chessboard, our people in America started to see. Now this is before the nation kicking off, before all the stuff ain't kicking off hard yet. So on the other hand, biblical prophecy said that the Ethiopian ambassadors would come to announce the return of the scattered Ethiopians to Zion. Therefore, reason Prophet Redding's salvation in his lifetime meant becoming an Ethiopian and escape Jim Crow. All right, so let's get to the good part. This is to certify my name was given to Elder Grover Redding, missionary to Abyssinia, to show my brothers in my motherland that I am with them heart and soul, and I have signed my name as an Ethiopian in America. In sympathy with our motherland Ethiopia, I henceforth denounce the name Negro, which was given me by another race. Well, ain't that's what people doing today? Oh, I ain't black. I ain't Negro. I ain't colored. But where you heard this at first? Where did this take life at? Where did this take life at? Where this statement took life at for our claiming on a certain component of nationality? Where did you learn this from? What happened? You know, my Moors ain't going to tell you all of this. Membership entails signing the application that committed oneself to return to my motherland of Ethiopia in order to fill one of the 44 positions such as electrical engineering, mechanical craftsman, so forth. At this point, the applicant declares himself ready at any time needed to fill any position in the list which he had checked and which he qualified to fill the blank. And here we go. Prophet Redding expecting Prince Rastafari to come out of Ethiopia with arms outstretched in the very near future. They keep putting 2019. That's a big mistake. At one staged at a parade to renounce American Jim Crow citizenship by publicly burning a flag in front of a cafe on 209 East 35th Street on June 20th, 1920. According to the Chicago Defender's newspaper, June 25th, a headline stated, Fanatic burns U.S. flag, murders 2, shoot police, imposter of the Abyssinian government staged gun battle in the street, is what they say. 2 white men are dead and several are seriously injured following a reign of terror which began at the 35th Street and Indiana Avenue last Sunday, June 20th at 7:30 o'clock. Hostilities started when Grover Redding, alleged chieftain of the Star Order of Ethiopia and the Ethiopian missionary to Abyssinia, burned the United States flag in front of Entertainers Hall. Redding, clad in regal style of after the Abyssinian customs, led a parade on horseback to this point. After being driven from Trinity ME 30th Street and Perry Avenue by Reverend Barber, he objected to the seditious language used by Redding and his followers who had engaged the church for lecture purposes. Redding engaged in short ceremony before he applied the torch to the flag. Policeman Joseph Owens of the Cottage Grove Avenue station was attracted by the flames and rushed to the scene to prevent Redding from burning another flag. Owens, according to the witness, attempted to arrest Redding, and when he placed his hands on the ladder on Redding, 4 shots rang out in rapid succession. Pa, pa, pa. Owen sank to his knees, but later regained his feet, staggering to the drugstore and sent in a riot call. R.L. Rose, white, a sailor from G15th Regiment, stationed at the Great Lakes Naval Training Station, ran to rescue to the rescue of the officer and made an attempt to secure the flag which Redding was about to burn. Massinferno and his son, alleged to be Abyssinians and followers of Redding, made for a nearby auto in which several high-powered army rifles had been concealed. Furno's son fired at Rose, and the latter made a dash for the United Cigar Store, later located at 270 East 35th Street. Rose was shot dead in the store, and Joseph White, a clerk, was also slain when he sought to rescue Rose. It has not been established whether Redding or Furious killed the two white men. Furious have not been captured. Witness stated that after Redding burned the flag, policeman Owens was shot, and one of the Furious shouted, "Join us, boys, we are the 40 million strong." Redding was arrested Monday. 2 days later, Prophet Redding was hanged. A supporter of the Star Order of Ethiopia said to the commission investigating race relations in Chicago, "I am a radical. I despise and hate the white man. They will always be against the Ethiopian. I do not want to be called Negro, colored, or nigger. Either term is an insult to me or to you. Our rightful name is Ethiopian. White men stole the black man from Africa and counseled with each other as to what to do with him and what to call him. For when the Negro learned that he was the first civilized human on earth, he would wise up and rebel against the white man. To keep him from doing this, it was decided to call him Negro after the Niger River in Africa. This was to keep him from having the knowledge of the Bible, for his right name was Ethiopian. This was done so he could always be ruled by the white man. And I will call your attention to the Bible that there is not one word of evil against the children of Israel in Ethiopia written in it. Ethiopia came out of Israel, and God said that they are his people and he will be their God. He also says after the 300 years of punishment, he will never go by the desert Israel again, and he will be with him forever and ever. We find by the Bible that the Ethiopian is the only child of God. So the Chicago Commissions on Race, it was time for Sir allegiance to the American government, consider themselves under the allegiance to the government of Ethiopia under Rastafari. So this was big, man. They were big. Boys pulled out rifles. They had a shootout. Why we don't know this history? Chicago Reverend James Morris Webb then began preaching from the pamphlet entitled "A Black Man Will Become the Universal King by Biblical History" to the UNIA. So Marcus Garvey didn't make the prophecy that a king. It was the Chicago Reverend James Morris Webb. Marcus Garvey didn't write the anthem. Came from Rabbi Ford. They were pushing Ethiopia. So preaching of the gospel of redemption for over a year. Marcus Garvey addressed the Newark, New Jersey division of UNA at the mass gathering attended by Robert Attila Rogers, after which Rogers declared Garvey an apostle of the Lord God for the redemption of Ethiopia and for her suffering pastorates. The UNIA 1922 convention on July 29, Reverend Webb again lectures the UNIA on the coming of the universal black king. The Persian consul, General H. Tokars, read a message from the Ethiopian regent plenipotentiary Rastafari. "I invite African Americans back to the homeland, particularly those qualified to help solve our big problems and to develop our vast resources. Teachers, artisans, mechanics, writers, professional men, women, and all who are able to hand in constructive work, which our country so deeply feels greatly needed. For as much as the children of Ethiopia." So you're going through this history and you see this. So you got, I'm not going to read all of the Ethiopia Holy Commands. Any of you have ever read the Pibby, the Holy Pibby? Y'all need to read the Holy Pibby and Attila. Robert Attila Rogers has some good books. Let's get a little further into this, because I want to clarify something. On August the 1st, 1924, on behalf of the 4th Annual Convention of the Negro Peoples of the World, Garvey wrote to the Ethiopian Empress, Zaditu, "Greetings from the 400 million Negroes of the world through our convention now sitting in New York. We hope for you and your country a reign of progress and happiness. Our desire is to help you maintain the glory of Ethiopia. Your expression of goodwill towards us 2 years ago through your consul general is highly cherished, and we are looking forward to the day when large numbers of us will become citizens of Ethiopia." This was the goal. Everybody was talking about Ethiopia. So let's go a little further. Because I'm not going to go too much in Lent how tonight. I'm going to go ahead and move a little forward to get to an understanding of this with Garvey. And so we can get this with Garvey. Garvey's UNIA followers marched side by side with Rabbi Arnold Ford's black Hebrews in the street parade through Harlem, carrying a framed life-size portrait of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I and the Honorable Marcus Garvey. Later in the year, Otto Garbo informs Rabbi Ford of the land concessions granted. 9 more members of the Ford's congregation repatriated to Ethiopia, including the UNIA member Ada and Augustine Bastine, joining Rabbi Ford, who had been in Ethiopia since the coronation. Garvey then set sails for London to file a petition to the League of Nations, which accused the United States and nations of Europe of violating human rights of African Americans and other African peoples. Right? I said this now. You're going before the League of Nations. 11 days after Garvey set sail, Detroit area UNI President Earl Little, Malcolm X's father. See, we got Malcolm X, we got Garvey, we got all these people tied to Ethiopia. What's going on? So Malcolm X's father, Earl Little, who was responsible for collecting signatures for the petition, was discovered dying on a trolley track near his home. Malcolm's father was out getting people to sign up to petition. You had a strong movement going on. We found unification under the title of Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie saw the need to recognize the incoming patriots as citizens of Ethiopia. Thus, when His Majesty issued the consolidated laws of Ethiopia that become part of the 1931 Constitution under the section Nationality 12.2, Haile Selassie provided for citizenship for black peoples of the West. He gave us nationality. This was our first nationality. This is where all of you talking nationality and you begging, trying to get recognized for nationality. It was already given to you by His Majesty. Let's go a little further in this. So, 1932, the peace movement of Ethiopia is established in Chicago. Petition contains names of 400,000 members of the race who were sent to President Roosevelt, with various branches established strategically all over the country. What? 400,000? All of them under the Ethiopian movement? So what do you think in America was the most feared name now? How did it just fall off the table? I hear brothers say, I'm neither Negro, black, or colored, and I ain't Ethiopian because this divide, it means divide. It don't mean divide, brother. It never meant divide. It meant somebody tried to divide you from a nationality, from a birthright. But we're going to get deeper in this. Let's get a little deeper. We're going to get a little deeper. So, here we go. June 15, 1935, Chicago Defender stated in big, bold letters, the top of its front cover, War in Ethiopia by September. 1935 now. Above several pictures of Emperor Haile Selassie and his troops, read, standing under a huge umbrella, resplendent in color and tingled with gold, Emperor Haile Selassie, the King of Kings and Lion of the tribe of Judah, startled the world this week with his pronouncement on the Italian-Ethiopian controversy. Speaking directly to black Muslim men who had gathered by thousands from all parts of the country to pledge their loyalty to the government, the emperor took advantage of the occasion to warn black people everywhere. All right, now we coming into the Armageddon. We got to be ready to fight. Warn black people everywhere, including those in the United States, that they owed their loyalty and support to Ethiopia. I am not only Emperor of Africa, I am the king of all Negroes everywhere, including those in the United States and other foreign domains. The emperor just claimed you. The Italian warlord is trying to destroy the last best hope you have on earth. He say in Ethiopia, say in Africa, he said on earth. And look at the statement. I am not only emperor of Africa. You can just say Ethiopia, say Africa. I am the king of all Negroes everywhere. So this is a very deep statement because this is an emperor making a statement. So he's decreeing you under his jurisdiction. He then openly defies Mussolini to do his worst and said if the power-crazed lords of Italy attempt to set one foot on Ethiopian territory, they will meet the rank and file of black soldiery all along the line until white sands of Eritrea are red with the blood of Italians. Say, we gonna fight. We gonna fight. So let me break something down before I go to the next little read. Okay. Okay. So I was trying to show you. Okay, in Chicago, here we go. In Chicago, 5,000 black men volunteered to defend Ethiopia, but were prevented by the United States government. That's why y'all boys be warned in Chicago. Y'all had that soldier blood in you. Y'all just need to get back in alignment to where you need to be fighting for and who you need to be fighting for. Black people all over the world volunteered to go to Ethiopia and fight to defend the last sovereign nation in Africa. Martin Luther King Sr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s father. Hold up, man. Stop it. You just said Malcolm X, you said Marcus Garvey, and now you're going to Martin Luther King? Come on, man. All these people tied to this history. How did they separate it? How did they take it away from Ethiopia if everyone was taking part? So Martin Luther King Sr. oversees the Ethiopian defense fundraising in the state of Georgia. We go from Chicago to Georgia, fighting for the Ethiopian truth. On November 28th, Emperor Selassie traveled to Dessie to personally direct the Ethiopians as commander-in-chief. On December the 7th, Emperor Selassie rejected the Horolavo plan to balkanize Ethiopia into a sphere of influence for Britain, France, and Italy. He wouldn't let none of them come and take over this thing. All right. He did a 5-point peace proposal, right? Break some bad history down for y'all where people try to do something. So you see all these soldiers, you see these guns, and you see it was a problem, you know, because Haile Selassie returned to Addis Ababa from the war front and summoned his remaining elders to meet, whereupon he supported a plan to transfer both himself and his government to the town of Gore. a settlement in the mountain near the Sudanese border to 100 miles west of Abyssinia. Discouraged by the British and French and U.S. officials, opposed by his family and supported by only 3 of his own consuleers, the emperor was forced to abandon his plan to continue the resistance and moved himself and government records outside of the country instead of to Gore. So on May 5th, 1936, His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie and members of the royal family departed from Ethiopia en route from Geneva, Switzerland to address the League of Nations. Okay? And he makes his home in Bath, England, the former capital of the Roman Empire and home to European kings. Thus, Haile Selassie left his royal palace in Addis Ababa for the royal palace in Bath. Right? Now, Haile Selassie arrives in London on June the 3rd. Garvey was a member of delegations representing the black community in Britain, which planned welcoming reception at a train station. The emperor declined to meet with the committee, which included representatives from British Guinea Association, the International Friends of Ethiopia, the Kiku Association of Kenya, the League of Colored Peoples, the Negro Welfare Association, and the Pan-African Federation, and the Somali Society, and the UNI. After this period here, Marcus Garvey spoke negative on His Majesty. All before June the 3rd, Marcus Garvey was in 100% with the understanding and the truth of His Majesty. But when he had traveled to England and he did not get a meeting with His Majesty, he felt disrespected. Because, you know, they parade in the UNI parade and they carrying the picture. He wanted that picture. He wanted that position to show, okay, we did it. We uniting it. Because Garvey was a hard worker. Garvey worked all day, night, try to unite people. But His Majesty at that point in time was trying to solve a particular issue, not get into another type of issues. He right then was at a certain component of trouble. So the tone of Garvey previously favored editorial change to criticism, then hostility from this day. Haile Selassie did not meet with any official reception sponsored by the British government either. He didn't even meet with the British. Only people he met with during that summer, however, Haile Selassie did meet with Reverend Lloyd Imes, pastor of the St. James Presbyterian Church, and Philip M. Savoy of the Victory Insurance and co-owner of the New York Amsterdam News, and Mr. Cyril Phillips, Secretary of the United Aid, who sailed to England to speak with His Imperial Majesty concerning financial matters. In response, His Imperial Majesty endowed Maleko Bayan to establish the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated. So all of this movement for the nationality, for the positioning from Marcus Garvey, from Martin Luther King to Malcolm X's father, everybody, to Nathaniel Huggins and Dr. Ben and Henry Clark, everybody's Ethiopia. Because Ethiopia was what united us. Ethiopia attaches to every history and people. It is the Kushite Ethiopian Empire. Now, I want you to get that understanding. So, we're going to get more into this Ethiopian World Federation. And then we're going to go to understanding another component, and we're going to close out. Just giving you some history to build on. So on March 5th, 1936, Dr. Bayan lectured to the Chicago Society. Boy, Chi-Town, y'all representing for the aid of Ethiopia. And stated that the fighting in Ethiopia goes on and that the Italians will soon be defeated when their funds run low. He also said no truthful dispatches have been received here since American correspondents were forced to leave Ethiopia. But the fighting still goes on. Dr. Bayan merged all pro-Ethiopian organizations into a new Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, with local #1 international headquarters in New York. The EWF adopted the former UNIA music director Rabbi Ford's Ethiopia Awaken as its anthem, and presenting its charter on September the 3rd through the law firm of Delaney Lewis. So here we start developing a corporate vehicle to bring all of those people under this Ethiopian Federation. What does it mean? Because according to Dr. Maleko Bain, he was creating a government to unite all black peoples of the world. So let's do a quick, let me go here. An empire is a number of individual nations that are all controlled by the government or ruler of one particular country. Right? So I want you to get what an empire is. An empire. So let's look. Let's see what they say. I want to get some law for you. This is a book list. I'm sorry, y'all. Thought they were going to give me a list. Well, you got them. You got the American Empire, Aztec Empire, British Empire, Byzantine, Dutch, French, German, Inca, Japanese, Mali, Mongol. See, it's not... Why they don't have Ethiopian Empire? Why don't have the Kushite Empire? Okay. So we're going to get this. So let's go here. Go back one. Because I want you to get to this law. I've been going on. I just trying to get you to a history to understanding. We're going to close out because you got this history now, but we're going to get these definitions right. One more back. And let's do emperor. An emperor, a sovereign ruler of great power and ranked especially one ruling an empire. An empire. He became emperor in 1930. Isn't that something that they put that as the definition, with the definition? Because he did become emperor in 1930. Is an emperor higher than a king? Emperors are generally recognized to be the highest monarchy, honor, and rank, surpassing kings. That's why he's king of kings. Okay? Let's get an understanding of that. So let's go ahead back to here now. Because we're going to get in a little deep. Because His Majesty was playing chess. And then we went to missing the chess moves. And we didn't see that His Majesty was playing chess for our liberation as well as the liberation of Africa. The 1955 Revised Constitution of Ethiopia, the conquering line of the tribe of Judah, Haile Selassie I, elect of God, Emperor of Ethiopia. Whereas the 24 years ago, at the beginning of our reign, we granted our faithful subjects and proclaimed the Constitution for the, what does it say? Empire of Ethiopia. And I want you all to listen to this and understand this. Because I hear all my brothers and sisters, they're quick to say, I ain't from Africa. My family been in America. My family's been in the islands. We're indigenous. Well, what happens is, yeah, you're correct. Be indigenous wherever you are. But no, I meant to do that. I forgot I already got it open. I want you to be indigenous, but I want you to understand this move here. Just if you thinking nationality, you thinking sovereignty, and you thinking freedom, and you thinking about how you as a people, we as a people, can really take our sovereign positions, our true liberated positions. Well, it comes right here. It's called the Doctrine of Discovery, the Papal Bull Doctrine, right? The Papal Bull, issued by the Pope Alexander VI on May 4th, 1493, really was issued in 1492. That's when they started removing the Moors out of Spain, and then this came after this as well. So the bull stated that any land not inhabited by Christians was available to be discovered and claimed and exploited by Christian rulers. So we could be exploited, and everything could have been done by Christian rulers that declared that the Catholic faith and the Christian religion be exalted and be everywhere increased and spread the health of souls by cared for and that the barbarous nations be overthrown and brought to the faith itself. So they beat us and they overthrown us. This doctrine of discovery became the basis of all European claims in America, as well as the foundation for the United States Western expansion. In the U.S. Supreme Court in 1823, case Johnson versus McIntosh. Y'all people out of Georgia, you better learn that name, McIntosh. Chief Justice John Marshall's opinion in unanimous decision held that the principle of discovery, listen, man, the Papal Bull Doctrine, this principle of discovery, this is a Supreme Court judge, man. Listen what he said. Ain't no humanity in his statement. Ain't no understanding of the humanity around the world besides in a European body. That the principle of discovery gave European nations an absolute, see how they interpret it? Gave European nations an absolute right to New World lands. Why would a Supreme Court justice say this? In essence, American Indians had only a right of occupancy which could be abolished. See, in the 90s and the 2000s, people were still petitioning the Pope and them to revoke it and recognize the human rights of indigenous non-Christian people. Why? Because they think the Pope has the highest authority as the throne of God. This is what they perceive, that the Pope has the highest authority. But on November the 2nd, 1930, this authority, this claim of the Pope was broken by the crown, the coronation of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie. See, this is why here, oh, wait a minute, let's see, wait, somewhere here. Let me. This is why here, this Constitution states without apology, elect of God. So the Pope tried to claim that he was the vicar, the elect of God, and that we were soulless beings and we ain't had no right. But see, when His Imperial Majesty claimed us as part of His empire, we are the people of His empire. So where is this empire at? Because Ethiopia, according to our Europeans teach us, it's a state, just a nation in Africa. But the empire of Ethiopia comprises all the territories, including the islands and the territory waters under the sovereignty of the Ethiopian crown. Its sovereignty and territory are indivisible. Its territory and the sovereign rights therein are inalienable. All Ethiopian subjects, whether living within or without the empire, constitute the Ethiopian people. Talking about nationality. So if you're staying on the islands, if you're staying in America, all you have to do is claim your right under the Ethiopian Empire. So how did His Majesty do this? What did he do? What did he set up? What is he doing? Because he's playing chess with these people. Because at one time, the Papal Bull controlled the world, and it was a global empire, colonial slavery empire, and these people signed into international law together to govern each other, with each other under this. This is a European pact. And the only way we would come out of this European pact, we had to make a pact together, united. But there was no nation, there was no country, there was nobody that had the authority to give us the ability to come together under this pact, under international stance and under true international law, but His Imperial Majesty. So His Imperial Majesty came and he was playing chess, y'all. Look at this language. What is an empire? So if you're in America, are you part of the Ethiopian Empire? Because if we go to our history, the Kushite Ethiopian, this is important now. Because I don't want you to think, well, I ain't going back to Ethiopia. Well, that's your choice and place. Maybe you'll understand it one day. But you always hear me say, you need to read this book, The Wonderful Ethiopian Kushite Empire. Why? Well, brothers and sisters, they're making legal arguments. If you fighting on legal grounds and making legal arguments, right? You should be able to make your positioning based on being a part of the Ethiopian Empire. We're going to go further how you verify that and get that solidified legally. But let's go here. All right. It should get me there. The excavations of Petra reveal in Egypt remains of a distinct race that preceded the historic Egyptians. The earliest civilization was higher than that of the later dynasties. Its pure art represented the old race that fills all the background of the prehistoric ages. It's colonized the first civilized centers of primitive worlds. The ancients called the pioneer Ram, which lit the torch of art and science. Kushite Ethiopians, the founders of primeval cities and civilized life. The wonders of India, to which Europe sought a passage in the age of Columbus, and costly products and converted merchandise of Babylon, and the amazing prehistoric civilizations of Asia Minor sprang from little recognized sources. Kushite Ethiopian. The achievements of this race in earlier ages were the result of cooperation. Kushites reached the true zenith of democracy. Their skillful hands raised Cyclopean walls, dug out mighty lakes, and laid imperishable roads, and have endured throughout the ages. They made roads that still are here. This was the uniform testimony of ancient records. Modern writers seem superficial research, either being unaware of these facts or knowing and purposely ignoring them. Archaeologists dig up proof They dig up proof. Ethnologists announce their origins, but history refuses to change its antiquated and exploded theories. The general history informs us that when curtains of history was lifted, the civilization of Egypt was hoary with age. It was old by the time they started talking about dynasty. It was a culture that must have developed from thousands of years of growth. Why is the scholarship of the world so silent? Is it to what lay behind the historic Egypt? No nation throughout the ages has as Athena sprung full-fledged into the knowledge of all the arts and science. The story of what lay behind Egypt fascinates the whole ancient world. The culture of Egypt did not originate upon the lower Nile. Who then was her teacher? It was the ancient Kushite empire of Ethiopians, which weighty authorities tell us ruled over 3 continents. We talking about the empire of Ethiopia. Ruled over 3 continents. So wherever you may be, your lineage was there. For thousands of years, should the world wait long to test the results of these ancient witnesses? Besides these gigantic achievements, petty conquests of Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Napoleon Bonaparte fade into insignificance. There seems to be fear to tell about these ancient who built the mighty cities, the ruins of which extend uninterrupted successions around the shores of the Mediterranean. Traces of the hoary empire works appear to have been wrought by giants, hearing marks of the Kushite genius, having been found by the scientists all over the primitive world. We marvel at the wonders recently unearthed in Egypt. Let us look behind her through the glasses of science, old race of which she in her beginning only a colony. Egypt was only a colony of Ethiopia. Egypt is a colony of Ethiopia. So Ethiopia had an empire. It's always been an empire. It's always been that throne keeper. It was the source of all of Egypt, all that Egypt knew and transmitted to Greece, Rome. We are accustomed to think Ethiopia as a restricted country in Africa, but this was not true. What did they say? We are accustomed to think of Ethiopia as a restricted country in Africa, but this is not true. The studies of ancient maps, descriptions of geographers old reveal that the ancient land of Kush was very widespread and a powerful empire. Let's go a little deeper, Mo. Rosemother shows that the Hebrew scholars called Kush all the countries of torrid zones. It was the race that Huxley saw akin to the Dravidians in India and stretching an empire to India to Spain. The Greeks describe Ethiopia as a country around the Indus Ganges. H.G. Wells says the Hamitic tongue is much wider and more varied language than the Semitic or the Aryan in ancient days. It was the language of the Neolithic people who occupied most of the western and southern Asia, who have been related to the Dravidian Indians and people of George Eliot's Heliotic culture. Sir H. Johnson says the lost Hamitic language was represented by the sacred branches of Crete, Lydia, and Bosquet, the Caucasian Dravidian groups, and the ancient Sumerians and Elamites. The peoples of the race were the first to give the world ideas of government. Stephens of Byzantine, voicing the universal testimony of antiquity, wrote, Ethiopia was the first established country on earth. Go a little deeper, Mo. And the Ethiopians were the first to set up the worship of God and establish laws. The later ages gained the ancient empire and the fundamental principles which the republic government have found in the basic stones of wonderful dominion were equality, temperance, industry, intelligence, and justice. The average historical book ignores the testimonies and disputes in its theories, records, and monuments of Egypt and Chaldea. They group the races in utter contradiction to the records of the Greek and Hebrews. In light of the reason, who would know about the ethnic relations of the ancients, that the scholars and the historians of Egypt, Chaldea, and Greece, who are more and more corroborated by the findings of science or theories of men of today. The modern writers who research has been superficial does not know that before the days of Greeks and Roman ascendancy, the entire circle of the Mediterranean, her islands, had dotted with magic cities, that the worldwide trade of Ethiopians. The gods and goddesses of Greek and Rome were but the borrowed kings of queens of Kushite Empire of Ethiopia. That's why they call one of the gods Ethiop, who became Zeus, Jupiter, Amun-Ra, was Ethiopia, Kush. So marvelous had been the achievements and primitives that in later days they were worshipped as immortal by people in India, Egypt, and old Ethiopia. So our ancestors became known as the gods on the earth. And some of you may say, well, that got nothing to do with me. I'm here in America. Getting to that. We coming. So go a little further down. Buns concludes by saying, on southern shores of Asia, Africa, by archaeologists remain, and the southern eastern coasts of Arabia. The name Kush was given to four great areas: Media, Persia, Susan, or the whole territory between the Indus, the Tigris, and prehistoric times. In Africa, the Ethiopians, the Egyptians, and the Libyans, and the Canaanites, and the Phoenicians were all descendants of Ham. They were a black or dark-colored race and pioneers of our civilization. They were emphatically the monument builders on the plains of Shinar, in the valley of Nile, or Meru, or Memphis. In the southern Arabia, they erected a wonderful edifice. They were responsible for the monuments that dotted Siberia and in America along the valley. Hold up. Let me get y'all right. I know some of you say you know you want to know how the black people was over here. Black people was always over here. The Kushite Empire was always over here in the West too. That's why America was called Ethiopia in the West. Look at those maps. So we part of the Ethiopian Empire. And His Imperial Majesty, the Emperor, brought us in to his jurisdiction from under the jurisdiction of the Papal Bull. See, the Papal Bull claimed us and said we was nothing. The Papal Bull claimed us. So I always hear this argument, but I ain't going back to Africa. You're ignorant of your history. We are global people. We've always been the empire that ruled and guided the world into justice, equality, and balance. So yes, they brought some slaves from Africa, and they found some Africans in the Americas. They found Ethiopians in Peru. They found us in the islands. So rather than sail all the way back to Africa, a lot of times the ships would sail into the islands, grab some, and take the people back to Carolina, would ride in. But the people were already here, so the people that was here was also being persecuted. So Ethiopia is the history that unites us, not divides us, not makes you bound to Africa, but makes you bound to the greatness of the world. So we need to understand when we say we are part of the Ethiopian Empire, it is all of this. Even in America, along the valley of the Mississippi, down to Mexico and in Peru, the image and monument stand in a voiceless witness. This was the ancient Kushite Empire of Ethiopians that covered 3 worlds. Some of our later books recognize their indisputable influence in primitive culture, speak of them as the brunette-brown race representing a mysterious Heliolithic culture. Wells testifies from research of Elliot Smith and admits that the culture had been oozing around the world from 1500 BC to 1000 BC. He calls it the highest early culture of the world. It sustains the largest and most highly developed communities, but as in other modern books, there is a failure to give us clear light upon the ancient culture in its origin. Baldwin speaks more frankly and affirms that the Hebrew writers described the first inhabitants of cities and civilized life as Cushites. The foundation of ancient religions and mythologies and institutions, customs had the same sources. The Ethiopian Empire is the Cushite. They were in America. They were everywhere. So when we give our allegiance to the king restores us back to his jurisdiction under the empire, pulling us from under the Papal Bull, putting us back in our indigenous control of our lands. Yes. So if you're in Jamaica, we can prove that the Ethiopian Cushite was the indigenous people that was there first. For the enslavement, for colonialism, we can prove. And then being that our people were here in America, we can prove. This is our history, our story. But a lot of times we don't know our story, and other people influence us and make us denounce our story. The Kushite Empire of Ethiopians covered 3 worlds. Let's go a little further than this. We're going to close out. That's how we're going to close out. We're going to close out on this, and then we're going to read the Constitution. Oh, shoot. All right. Here we go. All right. So now let's get to this on the Constitution. Laws of the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, the preamble. See the black peoples of the world. This is our Constitution. This is what His Imperial Majesty gave us. We, the black peoples of the world, in order to effect unity, solidarity, liberty, freedom, and self-determination, to secure justice and maintain the integrity of Ethiopia, which is our divine heritage. All right, remember, under the Papal Bull, you don't have a divine heritage no more. Remember that now. Under the Papal Bull, you didn't have a divine heritage. So you are restored to your divine heritage and do be hereby established and ordained. So His Imperial Majesty ordained the Constitution for the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated to operate in our nationality, in our sovereign position. But in the cry to prove things about His Majesty as spiritual prophecy, our people became divided in concepts of that, thinking, well, he ain't my Jesus. And they missed the strategic positioning that His Majesty placed us in, that He gave us through divine right. So when we talk about the Ethiopian World Federation Incorporated, we are talking about His Imperial Majesty. The Pope placed a lien on us, claiming he was the highest authority. Under the Papal Bull, he claimed he was the vicar of Christ, the elect of God. And he declared that we were soulless beings and he could do whatever. But then on November the 2nd, 1930, this claim of throne right and of the being this person of highest authority was challenged by the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Lion of Judah, the elect of God. And so this claimage under this authority was made null and void. And so the push was to get us to come to Ethiopia to help protect and build Ethiopia, because His Majesty, Ethiopia couldn't give us and protect us under this international position unless we made sure she was secure and strong as well. It was our last sovereign and great hope. Why wouldn't we go there to protect it? Because it would give all the ancient lands and the ancient people everywhere redemption, emancipation from the Papal Bull Doctrine, and to make sure that we could come out of their jurisdictions and have a government that not even the Ethiopian government could mess with. We would just have to stay in our own constitutional ranking as those people, we the black people. See this S right here? This is where you hear people say, I ain't Negro, black, or colored, and they ain't got no standing in law. That's a lie. This is a constitution ordained by the highest authority in law, an emperor. And in here, so the definition is clear, we the black people. So it's more than one type of black people. So you could be a black person in Mexico, black person in Japan. And if all of us came back together under our own one government, because you could start you a local. So you could be all Moors in a local. And be 25 of you set up your constitutional, you're protected. You could be all Christian of a certain faith under one local, which is a division, means you're like a state under the executive government. And you operate as your executive government in your terms, and you notify the local people of your position, because you're backed by the Church of Ethiopia and the Constitution given by His Imperial Majesty. You have a diplomatic position. But because we've been warring about how to perceive His Majesty and the works, and then brothers came in and said nationality, and we've been fighting with paperwork, but no, we had an emperor backing us. We ain't had to go try to hope somebody in Morocco or somewhere and people of America. We have an emperor who went full-fledged into this war to liberate us from the Papal Bull Doctrine, emancipate us, and gave us a government to operate under. What's the purpose of this government? What's the aims and objectives of the Ethiopian World Federation? What is it for? To promote love and good Ethiopians at home and abroad. Or you abroad. And thereby to maintain the integrity and the sovereignty of Ethiopia. You part of the empire, so we got to stay sovereign. To disseminate the ancient Ethiopian culture. Ancient, what we just talked about. Let me go back over here. This is the ancient culture. The ancient culture is what ruled the world. They found the ancient culture in America, Chaldea, Egypt, Mexico, Peru, Asia. The ancient culture of the Kushite Ethiopian. So we're supposed to be teaching this history to to our children, to disseminate the ancient culture, the Ethiopian culture, among its members, and to correct abuses. What is this government for? To correct abuses. Well, it can't be of ourselves, because if it's created to correct abuses, the abuses had to already come. So who did the abuses? The governments and the entities that have held us under the Papal Bull to relieve oppression. If we are being oppressed under this system, it's giving us a jurisdiction to step from under them and be able to challenge them government to government and carve out for ourselves our posterity and a destiny comparable with our idea of perfect manhood and God's purpose in creating us, that we may not only save ourselves from annihilation, because if we don't do this, these people are going to annihilate us, but carve for ourselves a place in the sun. And in this endeavor, we are determined to seek peace. My brother, my black beautiful brothers, my black beautiful sisters around the world, you are Ethiopians. You are of the ancient Kushite Ethiopian Empire. I don't care what you call yourself. American Indian, indigenous, Moor, whatever you may call yourself, you're going to find that it traces back to the Ethiopian Kushite Empire. You can't escape the oldest history of the world. From mound builders to the pyramids, to the rock churches of Lalibela, the message has been the same from the Ethiopian Kushite Empire. So again, a constitution was ordained. Ordained. Do you know what the word ordained means? Let me do it here. Well, let me just do it up here where I go back to the Constitution. So, we're closing out, y'all. The Constitution was ordained. Our history goes to the mound builders in America, to the mounds in the islands, so when we get here, now therefore we, Haile Selassie I, Emperor of Ethiopia, do on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of our coronation, hereby proclaim and place into full force and effect as of today, the revised constitution of the Empire of Ethiopia, for the benefit and welfare and the progress of our beloved people. You are part of the Empire of Ethiopia, which compromises all territories, including islands and territorial waters under the sovereignty of the Ethiopian crown. You must accept it for value, and you must declare it to the world. For all Ethiopians, subject whether living within or without the empire, constitute Ethiopian people. It has always been your protection, and that is what His Imperial Majesty gave us: divine protection. How to maneuver with the vehicle of government in this Armageddon war. Because without that support, we already seen, we would be annihilated. So give thanks for the divine build. I think I touched everything. I think I got to the history. I think I touched all the points to try to let us see what it is. And so we're going to close on now. Give thanks, y'all, for riding out with me. Just trying to let you see that His Imperial Majesty gave us more than what we're being educated on. And it's not about you saying anything about the divinity of His Majesty. It's more about you just seeing the truth of what He gave to you to protect yourself in this Armageddon war. Haile Selassie I, Jah Rastafari.